All right, welcome back to a very exciting panel at the Smart Protein Summit. I think we've talked a lot about how GFI India's major objective is to build the Indian ecosystem and to demonstrate a model for alternative protein that can translate across the developing world. And one of the major things that we need to do in order to do that is to create maturity in this ecosystem, to create maturity across science, business, and policy to stimulate alternative protein over the next decade as we seek to go from scarcity to abundance. Now, there are many centers across the world, many countries across the world that are doing fantastic work in this space, that have more maturity in their ecosystem and that can stand to benefit from the unique strategic advantages that India has as well. I'm very excited to think through some of these pathways for collaboration on this panel with Canada, because Canada has been doing fantastic work to stimulate alternative protein, particularly in the plant protein supply landscape. And I'm excited to welcome 4 guests here today who are going to tell us a lot more about it. So firstly, I'm going to welcome Bill Gruhl. William Gruhl is the CEO of Protein Industries Canada. He leads the development of their programs, resources, and initiatives, and his efforts have helped make the protein industry supercluster in Canada, which we're going to talk about, an instrumental player in the global plant protein landscape. Bill's combined passions for agriculture and innovation were the driving forces behind his career, with prior experience at biotech startup, a large multinational agricultural company, and multiple postings at the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture. Bill, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Varun, and thank you to the Good Food Institute for having me today. I'm joining you from Regina, Saskatchewan, which is the heart of the prairies. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about Protein Industries Canada.
Right. Let me just,
yeah.
Do you mind if I introduce the rest of the panelists first? And then
oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Not a problem at all. So secondly, we have Dustin Cosgrove. Dustin is the VP of Sales at Merit Functional Foods, a new plant-based protein startup where he will be leading commercial efforts and launching Merit's high-purity, non-GMO pea and canola protein ingredients later this year. Dustin has over 12 years of leadership experience in the industry, specializing in protein ingredient solutions for both dairy and plant-based for food, beverage, and nutrition companies globally. Dustin, welcome.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate being here. On behalf of Merit, we'd like to thank you for being here today.
Thirdly, we have Wayne Goranson, who leads research and development at Mera Food. He's a professional engineer with a degree in agriculture with more than 20 years of international experience working in food processing in developing economies. Wayne has successfully patented hydrodynamic cavitation technologies, which break down protein-rich seeds into a full fiber protein paste. This has been used for commercial and humanitarian purposes by providing rapid and cost-efficient solutions to alleviate protein deficiency and deliver essential vitamins, fiber, and minerals in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Wayne, welcome. Are you able to turn on your camera? Hi.
Hey there.
Good to have you, Wayne.
Thank you for having me.
And lastly, we have Dr. Lingan Chen, who's a full professor in the Department of Agricultural, Food, and Nutritional Science at the University of Alberta and Canada Research Chair in Plant Protein Structure Function. Lingan has significantly advanced the understanding of plant protein structure which underlies their functionality to develop protein ingredients towards health food applications. Another area of Lingan's interest is to develop biodegradable materials as well. She's been awarded the 2020-2021 Killam Annual Professor at the University of Alberta and has 150 refereed journal publications, which is the kind of thing that makes my eyebrows go up, and holds several patents and patent applications in the plant protein food application area. Lingan, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to join from Alberta in Canada.
Wonderful. Okay. So now that we have the introductions out of the way, I think let's dive right in. Bill, I'm sorry I cut you off earlier, but let's go into the wonderful work that Protein Industries Canada is doing. You've been instrumental in bringing together all kinds of important actors that we have with us on the panel today and elsewhere as well, accelerating collaborations and progress for all across academia, government, and of course, industry. Could you tell us a little bit about the genesis of Protein Industries Canada and the various areas of work you've undertaken, please?
Yeah, thanks, Varun. And it's very exciting to be representing Protein Industries Canada. I'm just going to show a couple slides that might help describe a little bit about what we do. So I'll just go. Can everyone? I think we can see that. So I've only got a few quick number of slides, so this isn't quite showing up the way that I wanted it to. So at Protein Industries Canada, I'm going to just I'll just speak instead of sharing my slides, Varun. Sorry about
Sure.
that. I couldn't
No,
get that
not a
right.
problem at all.
So yeah, Protein Industries Canada, we are what we call an innovation supercluster. So our job is really to bring together research, academia, and government together to capitalize on the opportunity, which is growing the value-added processing sector here in Western Canada. Western Canada is a unique environment. We grow an extremely high amount of high protein crops, canola, pulses, and cereal grains. We produce about 14 million metric tons of protein on an annual basis. Our job is to really help fund science and innovation and collaborative research between scientists like we have on the call today and our industry partners to develop new technologies, new types of ingredients for the food market. And so we really think there's a great opportunity for us to be an ingredient supplier of choice for the global marketplace around the products that we're producing. So as an organization, we're a member-based organization. We're investing about $300 million into the development of the plant protein sector across the value chain, right from plant breeding through production agriculture through to value-added processing technology. And I'll speak a little bit more about that as the panel goes on.
Wonderful, Bill. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to Dustin. Dustin, Merit Functional Foods is a very interesting, what you've described as a startup company, but you're already setting up a 94,000 square foot facility in Winnipeg with the help of the Canadian federal government as well for pea protein and canola protein manufacturing. Could you tell us a little bit about this, what can only be described as a meteoric rise, and about your future ambitions?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been an interesting year here for us at Merit Functional Foods. We started this, I guess you'd say, this startup back in July of 2019. There's a lot of work that went in before that. We've been building a facility throughout the year here. It's, you mentioned, 94,000 brand new state-of-the-art facility in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, where we'll be producing non-GMO and organic pea proteins, non-GMO canola proteins, which is a new and novel white space in the industry, as well as doing some blends. And so we're going to have a supply chain that exists throughout the Canadian prairies, fully traceable, ultimately from the Canadian prairies into our seed cleaner, ultimately to our BRC certified facility. At the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is solve formulators' challenges here. We're trying to bring high purity, taste forward, functional proteins to the marketplace in both the pea, which we all know exists today, and also the canola standpoint. So we're excited about what the future holds. We're about 90 days away from full commercialization here. So the timing is very interesting. And so excited for 2021 and beyond here as we head into the last 3 months of the year.
Wonderful. Wayne, I'm going to move on to you. Mera Food Group and you yourself are specifically known for pioneering really interesting, highly efficient kinds of food processing, which are useful or fit for purpose in low resource developing country environments. They generate minimal to low waste, for example. How did you find yourself aiming to tackle this problem in, let's say, Haiti and the Dominican Republic? How did you get to this point?
So I just wanted to say that I am not actually Wayne. I am Charles Gorans, and I'm Wayne's son. He could not be here today, so I just wanted to make that forefront. But to answer your question, because we're working with a completely new technology that has been not been implemented, it requires us to use multidisciplined approach. So fortunately, our engineers, we have about 26, 27 engineers, and our company have a vast experience in various sectors of the industry that we can draw on. In addition to the Saskatchewan Food Center, they were able to provide us with food scientists, technical guidance, and to assist our engineers in their industrial design. As we move forward on specific scientific achievements, such as a reduction of trypsin inhibitors in soy protein, these need to be documented and quantified by independent third parties. So we turn to several third-party advocates like the University of Carleton in Ottawa. Additionally, there is a demand in the developing world, global affairs. Canada has been instrumental in marketing key introductions for us as a Canadian company, resulting in additional business ventures. North America business is typically B2B, which is business to business, which is little government or institutional support. However, developing world government, university, or institutional support is greater leverage and is perceived an endorsement. The establishment of Protein Industries Canada was pivotal for our company, and that in our technology and philosophy and business we believed in for many years was prior validated, and not only for us, but for our new business partners in and outside of Canada.
Thank you so much, and I hope Wayne is okay. I'm sorry that he couldn't join us today. I'm going to move on to Dr. Chen. One of the major challenges that we face in the plant protein landscape is the analysis of protein chemistry, because we're really still very early in this landscape. So we need to develop superior ingredients, as Dustin has been talking about, Charles has been talking about as well. Your work in unlocking a great deal of this information has been instrumental to innovation across the plant protein and the health food space. When did this work begin coming to fruition, and what kinds of work are you undertaking now?
I'm going to have some video, slide to share with the audience here.
Please go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. At the same time, answering questions, I think our work get more impact when we have expanded our experience from dairy protein to plant proteins. Dairy protein, they have good solubility, good gelling capacity. You just put them in food formulation. And when we move to plant protein, we get excited about this more renewable protein resources. But at the same time, we faced issues like lower plant protein solubility versus animal protein. There are some issues about plant protein-based food with less texture than meat products, and also some color and flavor issue associated with that. So we found our expertise are more sorted by industry to help them to solve those problems. Our core competence is our capacity to understand the protein structures at the different levels. And we help industry to understand how protein extraction, processing, and as well as other food ingredients like carbohydrate, phenolic compounds impact the protein structures, and how those impacted protein structures determine their functionality and performance in food products. One example, a lot of companies come to ours. We have P fractionation, we have dry fractionation, we have wet fractionation, and we can use L classification to make protein flour, and we can use wet fractionation to make protein concentrate and isolate. And the protein get from different processing, they differ dramatically in quality and performance. What's happening there? So what we help industry to understand, for example, we have systematic research to see different proteins from different processing, they have significantly gelling capacity that are related to the protein composition you extracted using different methods. For example, we can see if we use myso precipitation method, we just get globulin protein extracted, no other protein. So this globulin protein, they specifically have very high gelling capacity. And we also identified that protein composition like 11S, 7S, they also significantly impact the protein gelling capacity. If we use, no matter alkaline extraction or salt extraction, if you use ultrafiltration, you can get more 7S in the protein, and those 7S, because they have a glycan group, so they can form very uniform aggregates. Those aggregates then form very uniform network that lead to protein with gels with very good mechanical strength. If we use traditional method like precipitation, acidic precipitation, we can get more 11S. Those 11S will grow into coarse aggregates, and that will make the protein network very coarse with low mechanical strength. So this is one sample to demonstrate our capacity can help industry to optimize the protein processing, not just for protein recovery, but also for protein functional properties. And also we can help industry to identify their processing are more friendly to protein. So if you use those processing, you can keep protein native structures with better solubility and functionality. And we can see clearly how protein get unfolded and denatured. And another question comes from industries that can we remove lipoxygenase from our protein extract? That's the spoilage enzymes that can trigger oxidation that can cause the beanie flavor. So we can help industry to see what kind of processing can remove those lipoxygenase from the protein extract. We also work with industry to see the new technology, emerging technology, like high pressure technology or pulse electronic processing. And one of the recent interesting findings is that we can using this new technology to decrease the gelling temperature of plant proteins. Normally plant protein, they have high temperature to form the gels, and those gels are very soft. But with this technology, we can make very strong protein gels at a temperature of 70 degrees to 80 degrees within 10 minutes. That's very important towards plant protein gelling capacity for meat analog applications. And another areas we try to manipulate protein, plant protein structures for improved functional properties, because due to inherent difference in terms of the structures, plant proteins, they are less functional than animal proteins. So what we do is that use our capacity to manipulate their superstructures and interactions. One sample is that by doing this work, we successfully make some plant protein gels from oat that have mechanical strengths comparable to egg white, that make them very protein ingredient with great potential for meat and analog applications. Another example is that mayonnaise. Mayonnaise have good texture, but they have 70% of oil inside. And recently, by designing the protein structures, we change them from their fiber and make the fiber aggregate. In that way, we can make mayonnaise with much lower oil content, but still maintain the structures. So based on this capacity, we hope to make more healthy food from plant proteins. So that's our core piece of expertise. We understand the protein structures at the molecular level and the supramolecular level, and we guide industry to improve their processing or develop emerging technology for improve the protein functional properties. And we also are using molecular strategy to improve protein functional properties for food applications. That's our research. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lingan. And it's really fascinating work. I think for everyone in the audience that may not be scientific, this is the kind of work that we need to do in new markets like India to understand how the structure of protein and ingredients affect the end product. So for example, as Lingan was talking about the solubility or the gelation capacity, I think that those things would differ across different application types. So if you're looking to make a plant-based egg versus dairy or mayonnaise, as she said, lots of different really exciting applications. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to take some time now to really dive deeper into the protein supercluster and the highway vision that is being built in Canada, because it's quite visionary and fascinating. I want to start with Bill, because of all the work Protein Industries Canada is doing to stimulate these initiatives and how instrumental you've been towards it. Could you tell us how the federal and state governments have been working to support this space and how Canada stands to benefit in terms of trade and job creation, please? Yeah,
thanks, Varun. I think so. The initiative of Protein Industries Canada is a $150 million investment by the government of Canada, and we're leveraging that funding by working with our industry partners to invest at least $300 million. So first and foremost, the federal government's role has been funding and support and creation of the vision around the Innovation Supercluster Initiative. This is happening across 5 sectors of our economy. So the federal government, first and foremost, their role is in funding, but they also play an important role in terms of market access, really understanding where are the markets that we need to be thinking about. They do this through the connections with the Trade Commissioner Service and Global Affairs Canada. And the federal government also plays a key role in research and innovation through Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's research branch and our National Research Council, which is the federal government's research arm, highly supportive of the work that's being done across the industry. On the provincial or state government level, I think really what you see is really around governments ensuring that we've got a competitive business environment in Canada for the commercialization of new knowledge and new technologies and the creation of new businesses. So the supply of utility infrastructure, good tax systems, and a strong, healthy business environment. but the provincial or state governments also play an important role in terms of research and innovation. So, you know, the universities are funded by provincial state governments here in Canada, so they play a very, very critical role. In terms of trade, you know, how will Canada be affected by trade in a situation like this, where we're moving from commodity agriculture to an ingredient supplier? I think really this will help insulate us from trade disruption long term as we move from commodities to ingredients and get better embedded into global supply chains with food ingredients. It's really going to help us with long-term trade disruption. And jobs, so our innovation supercluster, Protein Industries Canada, we are purely an economic development agency focused on GDP and job growth. So in addition to all the benefits that plant health, that plant-based products bring to environmental sustainability and human health, it's also an economic growth opportunity for Canada. So we're working to increase GDP growth by $5 billion and create a significant amount of jobs. And it's a really great marriage of when technology can provide healthy food in a healthy environment and be an economic growth opportunity as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's truly inspiring work by the provinces as well as the federal government. Wayne, can we check out your audio? Are you able to speak?
Good morning.
Yes.
My apologies for my technical challenges this morning, but
not a problem at all.
And, I hope you can hear me.
Yep. Thank you so much. So Charles was telling us a little bit about the history of the organization Mira Foods. I want to ask you, in line with the question I just asked Bill, business incentives and support, as well as kind of the academic environment in the ecosystem in Canada, so to speak, have been hugely important towards stimulating what is essentially a new industry. From your vantage point as an industry leader, what have been the pivotal moments and the sources of support that have helped you?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, the fact that it's recognized as something that we need to do in Western Canada. We've been exporting commodities for the last 120 years, and leaves us vulnerable to fluctuations in the international market. And so there was a vision of our company that we needed to become value-added producers, ingredient suppliers. And the fact that Protein Industries Canada was established and are recognizing that is critical to us. It gives us validation internally, but it also validates when we're dealing with and working with our international customers. They see a team approach. They see the government of Saskatchewan. They see the Canadian government as part of Protein Industries Canada, the universities we work with. And it gives it an incentive that's certainly different than in North America, where, as I heard Charles say earlier, that it is mostly business to business. And here, that perceived endorsement, that support is critical for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Dustin, really the same question. I mean, you're 90 days away from launch, which is very exciting, as you said earlier. What would you say are the pivotal moments that have helped you get to where you are in terms of the ecosystem support that you've had?
You know, I think as Bill kind of mentioned it, as you look at both provincial and federal government, they've been imperative to our success. Specific with PIC, right? We've been working with them probably pre-commercialization or pre kind of breaking ground last summer. And so kind of working together with them. As you guys know, we talked a little bit about this, the dairy protein processing that's out there today is very established. Plant proteins coming behind that, and it needs some incentives, it needs some support. The support from PIC has been imperative to our success throughout the last, I guess you'd say, year to year and a half. You know, as you guys look forward, we talked a little bit about some of the processing technologies. It's very capital intensive. It's, you know, as part of that. So there's obviously a lot of capital that needs to come in for, you know, companies like ourselves to launch a 94,000 square foot greenfield facility to provide the market with additional opportunities. And so we can't say enough about our work with PIC. And then on the academic ecosystem, we've been, you know, leveraging those relationships as well. They've been doing some studies for us. We've done some in vivo testing to validate amino acid profiles, things of that nature through the academic ecosystem as well. So those two for sure would be pivotal in our success here moving forward.
Fantastic. And PIC is, of course, Protein Industries Canada, which as a new insider, I will now start referring to Protein Industries Canada as PIC. So that's great. Dr. Chen, I think this is a piece of this that Dustin mentioned is also quite crucial, the academic ecosystem. You've been a plant protein pioneer for some time now. my guess is that the number of industry partners that have come to you has really skyrocketed over the last few years as this has become more commercially interesting or viable. Could you tell us more about how this ecosystem growth, government support, funding, et cetera, has benefited you as an academic partner? You're on mute.
I think those ecosystem growth has significantly benefited my research program and our training. And firstly, we see more industry partners that allow us to leverage more money from provincial and federal government. That's very, very important. Without money, we cannot do very advanced research. So with that support, we can analyze more complicated protein structures. As mentioned, it's very complicated by impacted by processing and other ingredient in food. Although this is fundamental in nature, but I do think this research has broad industry application potentials. So we think the generated knowledge has improved our capacity to design new protein functions and new food products. This will lead to innovation and intellectual properties that can play a very important role in economic development. Secondly, I think this ecosystem growth has greatly benefited our training of the student, not just reflected by increasing amount, but also their training quality. And, you know, I send my students to industry partners. I send them to pilot centers to do research. They get really excited to see what they develop in the lab get scaled up. And also they get very engaged when they understand how science can help industry product development and commercializations. And certainly, I think this is a positive feedback loop. If you have more advanced research program, you can have more training of more high quality students, and they will feed back to ecosystems and help industry growth. And finally, I think this ecosystem has benefit visibility of Canadian scientists and our impact at international level. This is reflected by our more invited presentation at international conference and by industry partners. And just yesterday, I see 4 colleagues from Canada, including myself, made keynote speech in Global Protein Summit. I see also Canadian scientists taking more leading role to organize scientific sessions or conference related to plant protein areas in a major international conference like IFT or ACS. And I think this is very importantly, collaboratively, I think this is also allow us to get connections with leading institute in protein areas like Wageningen University, like University of Massachusetts, whatever. And with all those efforts, industry, academia together, I think we can help also to grow the ecosystems, and especially for the training of the talented people that can work to build protein industries Canada.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, by the way. And we often say at GFI, across all of our partner organizations, that whichever governments continue to invest in this space will have bragging rights until eternity because of the sustainability gains and all the job creation, a lot of different things that are coming out of it. And I think you encapsulated that really well in terms of how the Canadian government's investments, 150 million bill is nothing to sneeze at. This is a significant investment, is stimulating this kind of respect internationally as well. It's a major reason for us in our initiative called the Smart Protein Corridors, as I said earlier, because we do want to stimulate not just, I think, Lingan, that the work that Canada is doing can stimulate not just the Canadian ecosystem, but other ecosystems around the world, which have different strengths from what's going on in Canada. So I think we can unlock opportunities for technology transfer, licensing, business relationships, trade, government partnerships. I think it's all hugely important. So I'm going to start with Wayne again. You've already done this to a certain extent in low resource environments. You've made major strides in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, with processing foods in a very economical, efficient way. I would imagine actually that these processing technologies would be well applied in South and Southeast Asia or other places like these, where we have a lot of post-harvest losses, for example. What kinds of international collaborations have you already cemented beyond what you've already done? And how would you look to leverage these kinds of international relationships?
Well, thank you. And, you know, it is moving up the value tree. And as Bill said earlier, we started in Saskatchewan as producers of a basic commodity for export, moving up to processors to have ingredients that we can export and develop here. And then finally moving up higher to technology, which can be exported and implemented in other places, as you said. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is some work we've done with the World Food Program. And first I want to give a shout out to my friends at the World Food Program. You got a Nobel Prize this morning for peace. And their theory is food is the key to security. Food is the way to stop wars. And congratulations, guys, good job on that. One of their biggest issues is the distribution of food. And typically what they've been doing is taking a processed product, either processed here in North America or in Europe, and transporting it to its need. And, they have a corn soy blend, a wheat soy blend that they make into a flour. It gets packaged and taken to the place of need. One of the problems they have is 37% of it gets lost. And as you process a raw seed into flour, it becomes very vulnerable, susceptible to all sorts of issues, microorganisms, insects, and it essentially doubles the cost of their delivery of the product. So working with them and being able to take a raw seed and processing it in place. And I wasn't online to see if Charles showed you some of our portable processing capability, but the ability to have processing at the point of need and not have those losses from where it is originally or pre-processed to where it's delivered. Additionally, they want to buy locally and have local producers and inject money back into their economy that's used again to feed the people in need. And you can't do that unless you have a means of processing. It has to be efficient. Typically, these facilities have been hundreds of thousands of square feet, huge overhead. Then it was just taking that technology, taking it down to a reasonable scale. So you only need a few hundred hectares under production to justify the processing. And so taking that, allowing it to be at a field level so you don't have so much of your energy and spent on distribution and getting things out of there. One of the things that we did, and we have a team of engineers that work in all sorts of environments. And we found engineers that like to work in refineries and could do things on a very space limited. And so taking these large food production facilities, compressing them down into something that could be portable, mobile, and reliable. Then we took engineers that had worked in some of the resource sectors in very challenging environments, either the desert or in a jungle or in the Arctic. And those systems have to be essentially self-sufficient. And so that's the way we've designed our systems, where they can be implemented in the developing world, so that we process our own water, we generate our own electricity. We only need the raw ingredients, which we can get locally from the producer or import, and then distribute to the places of need.
Thank you, Wayne. And actually, we have a little time if you want to just quickly throw up your slide to just indicate to the audience what you're describing visually. But I will say, as you do that much of what we talk about in India is a lack of infrastructure to process ingredients and even higher value ingredients like extrusion technology, so extrudates locally. It's a huge challenge that we have here. I would argue that extrusion has been a singular bottleneck in the plant-based protein industry in India since I started GFI India 2.5 or nearly 3 years ago. We've been having the same conversation over and over again. And so what you're describing is exciting and the kind of thing that we need to stimulate on the ground in India. If you're unable to pull up the slide, we can come back to it later.
Yeah, I think let's carry on.
Thank you. Dustin, I want to ask you a question about a similar concept about how you're looking to expand internationally, because you're emblematic of the kind of company the Canadian governments are looking to support, but your work can stimulate international ecosystems as well. So what would your goals be for a kind of corridor, let's say across Canada and India, especially considering that the goals of the governments in India, places like India, are to stimulate economy and jobs locally here in India?
Yeah, I think, I think we're taking a little bit of a short, mid, and long-term approach here of what we see. As you look at the job growth, for example, in the province of Manitoba, and we're not alone in this. There's a couple other processors that are building facilities, and there's going to be hundreds of households, hundreds of families that are positively affected from a job growth creation through this plant processing. situation here. And so, you know, as the called the plant-based market expands, you used to see kind of, it was more of a vegan niche market. Now we're moving more into that flexitarian market. I saw it in the dairy space for the last 10 years, how it's grown. I think for us, first and foremost, we want to bring those high purity, functional, taste forward proteins to the marketplace, not only just in Canada and North America, but globally. That'll allow additional companies, you know, in India and other areas to obviously formulate, grow their brands, start new plant-based products. You know, ultimately, we've got some growth plans within Canada for our facility. That's kind of the short-term plan, called the next 2 to 3 years. But ultimately, you know, could we see facilities in other areas of the world? Absolutely. Obviously, we have to get this facility up and running here in the next 90 days, as you guys know. But I think longer term, we see this as a global business. We don't see this as a North American only business. And we're excited for what is available in India, coming in India, as well as other areas of the world. You know, I fully believe we've had as much, I would say, interest from global or international opportunities as we have from North America. And I expect that to continue in the future.
Yeah, you don't actually have enough to do over the next 90 days, Dustin. We're trying to get you over here as fast as possible. Dr. Chen, I think there are 2 or 3 pieces of this that are squarely within your work, right? If we're talking about a connection between Canada and India or other markets, building a talent pool, you mentioned earlier, with delegations, university partnerships, conducting open source academic research, for example, selecting, processing indigenous crops that could come from India. And then, of course, helping companies across borders with product development, licensing, things you've done in the past. What kinds of initiatives would you say we can initiate, stimulate across these areas, and how do people engage with you?
I think immediately in my mind, as you mentioned, there are a lot of indigenous crops like pigeon pea, like cow pea, or like some other parts, crop resources. So I'm interested to work with Indian scientists to develop their processing and value-added food applications. And we all know India is the country with the largest population of vegetarian. So I'm thinking whether Canadian, protein ingredient from Canadian crop resources can be used to develop food that is suitable for Indian population, because we know there's difference from Western diet and Eastern diets. And it can be interesting for us to work with Food Institute in India towards that directions. And as an initiative, I think what we can do, maybe connect with Indian scientists, Canadian scientists, and industry together to build some dialogue or communication platform like Protein Summit, whatever. And we can work together to identify some emerging protein sources in both countries, and some new science and technology that have mutual interest in both countries to get started. So I'm open to all kind of collaborations, like student exchange or professor mutual visits, or work with industries to see how we can develop those protein resources together towards innovative food applications.
Thank you, Lingan. Bill, I want to ask you a question that really leans on your unique vantage point you have at the center of this ecosystem growth. It's kind of analogous to ours in India, let's say. Canada and India each have unique strategic advantages or strategic strengths that we can stimulate for these kinds of major bilateral wins. And that's a good thing, because there's a huge amount of work to do, opportunity to grow from scarcity to abundance over 10 years. What would you say are the foremost opportunities for collaboration across Canada and India?
Yeah, I think it's 2 things. One is related to trade, and so we've got a great trading relationship with India today. They're one of our major markets for the export of commodity products that we produce here. But you know, companies like Dustin's and Wayne's are really transforming the commodities from raw commodities to value-added ingredients. So I think we need to think about the trade relationships and the business relationships and the integration of food supply, agri-food supply chains, so that we're evolving from the raw commodity that we're producing today and starting to think about what we will be producing in the years to come. So an evolution of our trade relationships, moving from raw commodity to ingredient, I think is one. But then the other, and I think it's a theme that came up on a panel I was on with Dustin earlier this week, and also it's been peppered throughout this conversation, is collaboration on research, development, and technology exchange across a number of areas. Plant science is a natural one. Canada has some good background in that place, as does India. But I think, you know, what I've heard today around processing technology and processing research and technology exchanges on that front would be interesting. And the other one is around ag tech. And so Protein Industries Canada, we're invested not only in processing technology like we do with the companies that are represented today, but we also have a large research and science and innovation portfolio on the ag tech side. So that's everything from automation to machine learning, IoT devices, sensor technology. And I know that India has a large and burgeoning technology sector for the agriculture space. I think that's a really interesting area for collaboration as well.
Yeah, tons of agri-tech investment now relative to 5 or 7 years ago. Wayne, I want to take this next question to you on that basis. Bill just mentioned something very salient, which is that a lot of this research and development is going to be where where innovation stops in India, because we do have a lot of capabilities, a lot of talent, but it isn't currently yet flowing into this sector, and we don't have a base of research that we can build on just yet. So when thinking about a lot of these things, how were you able to establish partnerships? What specific kind of partners were you looking for when you went into a new market to establish processing on the ground? Because you've talked a little bit about the technology, and it is fascinating, but what kinds of partnerships can help you bring that technology to market in these new areas, in these new geographic areas?
Well, you know, obviously we need, when we enter a new geographic market, we need a local partner that understands not only who to do business with, but who not to do business with, and to make sure that we align our interests properly with the local people, and then understand the idiosyncrasies of the market. We're sitting here in Western Canada, but there's a lot of things in developing markets that we don't understand in terms of what personal preferences the consumers have, and then what social and business ethics exist where we go to. And so we look for people like that. But, you know, in just developing our technology here in Canada, we source partners around the world. In fact, when we model our machine, and our machinery works on some high volume flow rates, we use the university in Chennai to do our finite element analysis. And we take advantage of the time, because at 5 o'clock, we send the models we need over there. And when we get to work at, well, today it's 6:30, but at 8 o'clock, the work is handed back to us and we can review it during the day. So it makes efficient use. And so they're helping us a lot, and hopefully we're teaching them something as well.
Wayne is absolutely obsessed with efficiency. Dustin, I have a question for you about the idea of on what basis a lot of this will succeed, because at GFI we talk about taste and price from a consumer standpoint being vastly the most important goals that we should have as an industry, as a sector. I mean, there's a bunch of other aspirational stuff in there. There's sustainability, there's animal welfare, there's a lot of stuff, but especially in a market like India, it's so price sensitive and you can't give up on the taste. As an ingredients provider, what are you seeing as key factors? Is it that, and how does it differ across different markets?
Yeah, so I think there's 3 things that we learn as we kind of evolve here, and there's taste is absolutely one piece of it. The other piece would be texture, and I think there's a lot of times you'll hear people talk about plant-based products in the marketplace historically as being gritty, chalky, things of that nature, and so it's been a bit of a barrier for maybe a repeat purchase. Price obviously is still important. Don't get me wrong, but I think from our perspective, we're looking at it from a value. What's the value versus what's the price? And so when you bring a taste forward ingredient, we talked a little bit about some of the challenges earlier in the panel, right? Where we talked about solubility, we talked about gelling ability, we talked about emulsification, foaming and whipping. When you all of a sudden bring new ingredients to the marketplace that can achieve those things, all of a sudden the value becomes more important than the price. And I can give you an example where in North America, we've done a lot of work on dairy alternatives in regards to plant-based ice creams or non-dairy frozen desserts. Well, we've created some canola proteins, for example, that work very well in these. and in theory can replace other ingredients that actually are more expensive than the ingredients that we're talking about. So there's value, and there's also, you know, innovation in regards to, even though these are maybe a little bit higher priced than maybe a soy type product, they're lower than some of the other ingredients out there and bring a new functionality. So we're looking at it from a value proposition of taste, functionality, and texture.
Got it. And like you said, I think that's the perfect place to bring in Lingan, Dr. Chen, who's just an expert, global expert in all of these things, right? So, Lingan, what are you seeing in terms of major challenges to diversifying these crop ingredients? Is the approach going to be mainly looking for or bioprospecting specific functionalities or properties among different crops, or would it be breeding, or would it be a hybrid of different approaches in order to find the functionalities that we need? So for example, on day one, we had a keynote from Josh Tetrick of Eat Just, who said that an egg has been hiding inside the mung bean for a very long time, for 4,000 years, right? So is it about unlocking functionalities that already exist, or is it about getting to what we need through hybrid approaches?
I think both, because as I mentioned that by developing the processing, we can unlock the potential of plant protein. And many people think plant protein is inferior to animal protein in terms of the functionality. But if you design their structure, you can unlock those potential. On the other hand, we also work with breeding scientists using our technology to see they have some high protein pea varieties. So what will help them to understand not just increase the protein content, but can we modulate the protein composition to achieve better functional properties, or remove those beany flavor or some allergic proteins from that. So I think both are important. And another thing I think we don't address yet is that nutritive value, because those parse crops, they are not just the protein, they have vitamins, minerals together. So how we can develop the ingredient with protein as a matrix to deliver those irons or vitamins to human beings, that's very important. So we are working with nutrition scientists to target those challenges to see how we can make more safe, nutritious, and food products with the texture, quality, meet the consumer demand.
And fiber too. I think fiber is the one that's currently getting a lot of attention across the plant protein landscape, right? Like, because animal meat would not contain any fiber, and that's something that people are saying is extremely important in favor of plant-based proteins. Dustin and Wayne, I have a question for you that's similar to what I asked Bill before. What would you see as the main opportunities, either in terms of markets you're looking to target? Dustin, I know you said you're mainly looking at Canada for the time being, but if you look 5 years out onto the horizon, if you had to identify one or two major opportunities for you as organizations, what would you say are your top priorities in that time frame? Dustin, would you like to go first?
Yeah, just make sure I understand your question correctly. So what are our, call it 3 to 5 year priorities? Is that what you're?
Yeah, either in terms of, let's say, product portfolio, or even markets that they're looking to get to.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I think a couple things for us. Where we start is not where we expect to end. I think, you know, we're beginning with the end in mind. You got to start somewhere. We've licensed technology for all pulses in canola. So today we're talking about pea protein and canola protein. If we're on a panel here in a couple of years, maybe we've got some other things to talk about. And ultimately, I think we're trying to push the plant-based space forward. I think there's been a lot of great work done to date. There's been, you know, some excellent products launched, but I think there's also been some limitations, and we talked about that a little bit, right? And so you mentioned the Canadian and North American kind of marketplaces, but I think we're looking global as early as 2021, 2022. And I think that's kind of say, okay, we got to get started in North America, but I expect us to have business globally in 2021, probably expanding in 2022 and into 2023. And then as we kind of fill up the plant and move on from phase 1 to phase 3 in our facility, you know, there's probably opportunities to expand outside of that. But I think where we see our value for this marketplace is how do we push the plant-based forward up the value chain? And Wayne kind of talked about that. And so what do you mean by that? It's how do you make products that, how do you begin with the end in mind with creating ingredients that make end products that the consumers want to come back to day in and day out? They have the same the same protein levels as dairy, right? So for example, a yogurt alternative versus yogurt today, in North America, at least, you're seeing 1 to 6 grams of protein per serving, right? ultimately we've been formulating stuff from between 8 and 14 grams that still taste very good, have great texture, right? This is just an example of where we want to go. So we want to push that plant-based space up to increase nutrition, but not sacrifice taste and texture. And if we can do that with our ingredients and help formulators do that, we can expand this thing globally across the world.
I just want to comment on that before you go, Wayne. So I think, so this is a very interesting point that you just mentioned. There is this sort of collision internationally between these mega trends of, there's clean label as well, but there's also nutrition dense, what is in nutrition called functional foods. I don't mean that from a food science standpoint. I mean functional foods from a nutrition standpoint, where it's like throw curcumin or turmeric into something that you wouldn't expect to find it in, and then you have the anti-inflammatory properties of curcumin. And that you just highlighted the higher protein and the functional aspect of it from a nutrition standpoint is super, super interesting as the next phase of plant-based foods, perhaps. Wayne, could you tell us a little bit about your plans as well and your top priorities over the next years?
Yeah, so we're rather market-driven, and it's an interesting feature with, as you develop a disruptive technology, we have two kind of diverse markets. Here in North America, it's chosen by the consumer, the savvy consumer, a high value, quality product that they are beginning to consume now. And we see that market growing. In traditional markets, Brazil, India, China, where they're already consuming vegetable protein, we're able to deliver to that market because we can do it cost effectively. So there's kind of two paths of growth. We're working in North America with several major food producers to provide them ingredients and beverages that they can put on their shelves, and knowing that it's of high quality and efficiently processed. And so, concurrently, I guess we've got two developments going on, one here in North America, but then also addressing the BIC, where the consumption of soy and pulses is already ingrained in the culture, being able to deliver to them, at a cost-effective way.
And at this point, I think the Chinese market is really heating up for plant-based, at least for the end products, right? I think a lot of the launches that we're seeing are really interesting. So Wayne, are you specifically looking at the Chinese market?
Yeah, in fact, we recently just manufactured a bunch of product for Chinese consumer packaged in a Tetra Pak. And interesting, the product that they wanted, with all of the food development and flavor profiles and work we did, they wanted a soy product that tasted like soy. And so if you looked at the label on the Tetra Pak, it's soy and water are the only ingredients. And we see a trend of that, people looking for, very clean products where they know how it's going to affect them when they consume it.
Absolutely. Can we throw, I think we have a few minutes left to go to questions from the audience, and I'm seeing two questions that would be well applied to Lingan and Bill. So can we throw that up, the Slido, please? So Bill, I'm going to preempt this and just say the first question that I wanted to ask is kind of similar to what Wayne just said about international markets. A lot of what we advise entrepreneurs in India is the market in India is going to take some time to pick up for meat substitutes and egg substitutes and dairy. Dairy is a little bit more advanced, as it has been everywhere. But what can you advise people in business in this space to think about in terms of markets, whether the North American market, from your vantage point, is something that's just going to keep ahead over the next 10 years, and then other markets that are more immature will catch up in terms of consumption and demand?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things we have to consider is the speed at which we're building out processing capacity in Canada, in North America, and globally. So, pick your study. JP Morgan Chase just recently came out with an estimate that the plant protein market was going to be $100 billion. Barclays Research came out with some market research that pegged the market at about $140 billion. And either of those, so even if those are half right, this is a large market growth opportunity, and they're still only representing about single digits in terms of the replacement of the meat market replacement. And so I think what we really need to think about is the speed at which we're building out processing capacity, because the demand is growing extremely fast.
And then the second question I wanted to highlight was to Lingan, which is about protein structure representation. So, I mean, once you narrow down proteins that are responsible for texture, flavor, and aroma, this is similar to the question I asked you earlier, would you work on redesigning protein profiles as well as raw extraction, or what would you think about as an approach here?
I think currently, like meat analog, people wanted to have protein concentrated or isolated. That is more purified protein. That's the current industry practice. But on another hand, mentioned earlier that there's starch, fibers, or other ingredient together with protein. So I'm thinking in the future, in terms of the protein development, it's not just the protein alone. We need to consider there are other nutritive ingredients, for example, how we can combine protein and the fiber together to achieve improve the nutritive value, but also provide a good sensory quality for that food products. And that also will make our processing more sustainable because we don't remove other ingredients, just concentrate on the protein. We need to work on some protein flours with other ingredients together. But that poses the further challenge. Can we achieve that with our goal? But that's what I'm thinking in the future down the road.
Thank you so much. So we have a hard stop in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask everyone in sequence this question. At the end of this decade, in 2030, and we've started off the decade in a very, very chaotic and interesting way. At the end of this decade, what level of maturity do you think we can see in the global plant-based ecosystem? And will it be, as we are seeing now, very unevenly distributed? I'm going to start with Lingan. I'll stay with you. From a scientific standpoint, how far do you think we can get in this decade towards developing great products and moving forward?
I think in terms of plant protein-based technology, it's not far away. We see a lot of companies that they are making meat analog, fish analog, dairy replacers. And I would like to see towards the end of this decade, at least in Canada, let's say 1/3 of the protein come from the plant resource. That will make the strategy for the society to convert to a more healthy diet and towards more sustainable food structure.
That sounds like a great balance. Dustin, Wayne, in 30 seconds, any prognostications?
Yeah, I'll go quick. I think we've seen this happen already in the dairy protein space, right? And I see that this is a very good kind of precursor to where we're going with plant. I see a lot of similarities of where dairy grew like this for about 10, 12 years. I think we're in the first or second inning of a 9-inning game here. And I think we're going to follow the evolution of the functionality of dairy proteins very closely behind.
So I'll split it into two ways that I see it going. In the North American market, it's going to be consumer driven, but we have a lot of new young consumers that are very conscious about their health, very conscious about what they consume. And that's going to drive the market. And that's going to, I think, take us into a very fast growth period in the next 5 years for plant protein. You can see it just walking through the store now. In the rest of the developing world, as population grows, financial resources are limited, consumption of meat and dairy products is just not affordable. And so there will be, and there is a big demand for plant protein as a quality substitute for traditional meat diets. And the faster we can develop those technologies, lower the cost for those developing markets, the faster it will go.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill, Wayne, Dustin, and Lingan. It's been fascinating having you on. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Vern.
Thanks.